DNC bosses contemplating a superdelegate coup if Bernie Sanders leads in delegates. A widely shared New York Times article about the growing nervousness Democratic Party bosses have about Bernie Sanders includes one comment from a superdelegate that may prove controversial. On Tuesday, the Times' Jonathan Martin published an in-depth look into how the party's leadership is coping with the seemingly unstoppable surge Senator Bernie Sanders is currently experiencing, going from a fringe radical candidate in 2016 to the clear frontrunner in 2020. Now, superdelegates don't get to vote until the second ballot at the Democratic National Convention, meaning the first ballot is just for pledged delegates. In the Democratic primary, anyone who gets 15% of the vote in any state's caucus or primary is guaranteed at least some of the pledged delegates. That means that with 19 candidates currently on the ballot, it's very possible Sanders won't get a plurality of delegates needed to clinch the primary on the first ballot. By design, the superdelegate system is there to give a boost to the establishment-favored candidate. So here's a quote from Senator Debbie Stabenow of Michigan. Should no bargain be struck by the time of the first roll call vote at the 2020 convention in Milwaukee, such as a unity ticket between a pair of the leading delegate winners? Now, let's stop right there. What is that code for? That is code for if someone like a Bernie Sanders is the clear winner, hopefully they pick an establishment candidate as their running mate, so we can try to kneecap the actual progressive as best we can. That's what that's code for. That's what unity ticket is code for. When I'm calling for a unity ticket, I'm referring to Bernie Sanders and Tulsi Gabbard because I think that the progressives need to be as big and loud as possible to not be cheated. And I think that is the biggest, loudest possible ticket we could ask for. Neither candidate's perfect. Bernie's not perfect. He's far from it. Tulsi's not perfect. She's far from it. I'm not looking for perfection in a political candidate. I don't expect that, ever. But they are by far the best choices we have that have a realistic chance to be so big that they can't be stopped. By far. So, and yeah, I think if they don't pair up, we're not going to get out of the primary. They're going to shove it. And hey, here you go. It's straight from the horse's mouth. Here's a superdelegate saying, yeah, we're looking to cheat. Should Bernie be the front runner? Well, here, let's finish the quote. The nomination battle would move to the second ballot, and under the news rules crafted after the 2016 race, that is when the party insiders and elected officials known as superdelegates would be able to cast a binding vote. The specter of superdelegates deciding the nomination, particularly if Mr. Sanders is a finalist, is highly unappetizing to party officials. If we have a role, so be it, but I much prefer that it be decided in the first round, just from a unity standpoint. So, Debbie Stabenow here is acknowledging we picked the nominee. That's what the superdelegates do. They want to have the will of the establishment be done. They don't just follow the popular vote. They don't follow the will of the people. Al Franken went against the people of his state, saying he knew better than them in Minnesota. Al Franken said he knew better than them. So this is what the superdelegates are for. They are there to stop progressives. And that's how it's sold to us, by the way. You know how the official narrative on why superdelegates are even a thing is because, McGovern happened, and he got trounced by Nixon. So we need to make sure that the poor plebs don't do that again, and don't put someone up there that they just couldn't win and would lose in a landslide. What have the superdelegates done recently? They stopped the person who could have beat Trump in favor of maybe the only candidate in American politics who was capable of losing to him in 2016. 2020 is a different story. Trump could beat a lot of people in 2020. It's a different story now. But in 2016, the superdelegates kneecapped the guy who would have beat him in favor of the candidate who was probably the only candidate that would have lost him. I think if you would have thrown Biden up there in 2016, Biden would have beat Trump. I think an establishment Democrat who wasn't Hillary Clinton probably could have beat Trump in 2016. But she was... So anyway, we don't need to rehash all that. But, so that's what the superdelegates do. They're not there to reflect the will of the people. They're there to stop the progressive. I know we know this, but here you have a direct quote. They're saying it. Well, if Bernie Sanders is in the running, that's not going to be pleasant. Why is it not going to be pleasant? Because I'm going to go against. We're going to go against that. We're going to make sure we get an establishment candidate up in there. And that establishment candidate they'll go on to lose to Trump. They won't beat Trump. They'll lose. No one will be stuck with another Trump term. So there you go. I mean, look, boom. Look at that. The specter of superdelegates deciding the nomination, particularly if Mr. Sanders is a finalist. Why? Why? Well, because that means he's popular and we're going to go against the will of the people. If we have a role, so be it. We'll go against the will of the people if we have to. But I much prefer that it be decided in the first round just from a unity standpoint. I'd much prefer Sanders just shuts up or we get an establishment candidate in there after the first round, that the propaganda is thick enough, that the media helps us out enough, that we can stifle Tulsi Gabbard and Bernie Sanders in the first round, get them out of the running, so then we don't have to worry because we're going to get an establishment puppet to go on and lose to Trump. We're going to actively go against the will of the people. And it's because they're official. We want to prevent another McGovern. That's the explanation they give you. That's the fluff, nonsensical, insulting explanation they give you. Oh, you poor feeble-minded plebs, you might nominate another McGovern. We need to make sure you don't do that by offering up this establishment nothing who's going to go on to lose to Trump. Superdelegates shouldn't exist. They are completely undemocratic. There is one appropriate number of superdelegates. That number is 0. Superdelegates exist in the Democratic Party and not the Republican Party because the Republicans don't need them, because the Republicans are already, on the surface, the party for the elite. They're the party for the 1%, and they make no qualms about it. So they don't need superdelegates. Even when they have a, quote, outsider like Donald Trump, it's still just another plutocrat. He's still going to do more of the same, which he went on to do. He talks a little meaner. He's a little out of the box. But he's the same thing. He's the exact same thing. He is a Republican minus subtlety. That's all Donald Trump is. So they don't need superdelegates. But the Democrats, because we don't have real choices in this country, because we just have a fringe right-wing party and a center right-wing party, that's all we have in this country as far as parties with power go. They need to make sure the working class doesn't get too loud. So they need something like superdelegates to keep the poor people at bay and keep the status quo going and keep the donor gravy train rolling. That's what this is. And here you go, right on the surface. They're saying it out in the open. They're saying it out in the open. That's why when people, when people are talking about all these other things and they throw like a sentiment out there like our democracy is at death's door. Like, yeah, it has been for a long time. What democracy? Let me know what. Our democracy is dying. How can something die that's never been born? Democracy is a great idea. We should try it sometime. We should really give it a shot. I mean, it's like... It's like when you go to... it's like when you order... Or no. You go to a store and you get these like real fruit bars and they say they're real fruit, but then you find out that actual fruit is like the 10th ingredient. Like the first ingredient is sugar, the second ingredient is water, the third ingredient is some ridiculous syrups that are basically just sugar in a different format. And then there's juice concentrate further down the line, and then like by the 10th ingredient, there was maybe a little bit of apple that was in there. That's what our democracy is. That's the type of democracy. It's democracy. It's real democracy. Oh, with a hit of the first ingredient though is superdelegates, and then the electoral college, another ingredient. We have all these other ingredients. A propagandized media, a status quo seeking ruling class, a plutocracy, a system that goes against public opinion 100% of the time. We have all that somewhere down there. You do get to go into a ballot box. And there you have it, just right out in the open. We don't want to have to cheat the will of the people, but if we have to, we will. Superdelegates. We are very tragically, ironically named the Democratic Party. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today.
Get your news on with Ron. Don't you wanna know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. You can tweet me an article at Ron Placone. We'll go through it together and make it our own. Get your